Welcome, students! Are you struggling a bit to remember all your poems from first flight? Or are you looking for a quick and effective way to revise all the different ideas and themes in the poems? Well, look no further because you're in the perfect place. Watch this video entirely to revise all your poems from first flight and understand the meaning behind all of the poems in a quick and effective way. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get to it. Today we will be going over the poem Dust of Snow. Now, Dust of Snow is a small but impactful poem, and obviously we're not going to summarize it, but we're going to understand it better. As always, let's first read the poem together once and then get into the analysis. Here it is. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. By Robert Frost, but I'm sure you already knew that. Alright, now let's try to understand the poem better. This poem presents a simple moment, but it has a larger significance. The poet says that he was in a sorrowful mood and was sitting under a hemlock tree. It was the winter season and there was snow all around. A crow was sitting on the same tree. The crow was shaking down the dust of the snow on the poet. When a small particle of snow fell on the poet, he was awakened from his thoughts and then noticed a simple activity going on around him. This changed his mood. He suddenly realized that he had wasted his time being in sorrow and now he should utilize his remaining day in doing some other useful tasks. This realization changed his mood and filled him with positive energy. His melancholy and his sadness gets washed away by the light shower of snow dust. His heart is filled with happiness and he gets ready to spend the rest of the day in a better way. The poet, though he was suffering from utter despair and witnessed bad omens like a hemlock tree or, a crow, he chose to bring a positive change and move on. A small gesture from nature made him realize how beautiful life can be if we know how to cherish it. And another thing that this poem does tell us is that even bad omens don't necessarily have to have a bad effect on you. So I hope that makes the poem clearer for you, and that brings us to the end of our short and sweet session. Today we will be going over the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. It's a rather short poem, so we will read it together once and then understand it better. So let's get to it. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Now, a short poem with a lot of meaning packed into it, so let's unpack all of that meaning together. So the poem expresses the idea that the world will end someday either by fire or by ice. Here, the poet has compared fire and ice with the self-destructing emotions of human beings. The Fire and Ice poem beautifully describes how humans let these extreme emotions rule over them. In this poem, the poet expresses the two ways in which the world may end. Some people say that the world will end by fire, while others say that it will end by ice. The poet compares fire and ice with the self-destructive nature of human beings. According to the poet, fire stands for things like desire, greed, and lust. There is no end to such emotions. The more humans try to fulfill them, the more rapidly these emotions spread, just like fire. And then these feelings often engulf human life and they get trapped in them. As a result, people become egoistic, selfish, and cruel. On the other hand, the poet describes ice as the rigid, rough, and hateful, cold side of human beings. People become harsh and do not care about the emotions and feelings of others. They are indifferent to other people's happiness or sorrow. The poet says that he is aware about the fiery desires of human emotions, so he will favor those who think that fire will end the world. Then the poet rethinks again and he imagines that if the world actually had to end twice, then ice has the capability similar to fire to destroy the entire world. The poet says that since ice and fire both are growing with such rapid speed, the world will end soon, either by fire or by ice. So, the poet is actually asking us to get a grip on our emotions and don't let your emotions take the better of you. All right. That brings us to the end of our analysis. Today we are going over the poem A Tiger in the Zoo. And as we do with all poems, we're first going to read it together and then have not a summary but an analysis of the poem. So let's read the poem. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage, on pads of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass, near the water hole where plump deer pass. He should be snarling around houses, at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. But he's locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Okay, so let's get to the analysis now. The poem written by Leslie Norris explains the agony and helplessness of a caged tiger that lives in a zoo. The poet explains what his life could have been if he had been a free animal. The poet has tried to explain the condition of animals caged by humans for their own fun. Now, the poem begins with a description of a tiger that is very beautiful and is walking in his little cage. He has beautiful stripes on his skin and velvet-like soft paws. But the tiger is not happy and is quite angry about being confined in the cage. The poet says that if the tiger was not confined to the zoo cage, he would have been hiding behind the long grass near some water body in order to catch its prey, which is the deer. Also, he would have terrorized the residents of the village that is right next to the forest area. But the reality is totally opposite to this. The tiger was confined in a cage made up of strong building material and is helpless there. He could not show his power and he pretty much ignored all the visitors. So the tiger, who's known to be terrorizing, who should have been terrorizing the village, never tries to terrorize the visitors. The tiger is described as being powerless and agonized by the poet. So he says that when the tiger is alone at night, listening to the voice, first throughout the day listening to the voice of the visitors and then at night listening to the voice of the patrolling cars, all the tiger can do is look at the stars. So the cage life has totally changed the tiger's personality. The poet is trying to say that the animal which is famous for its fearlessness and freedom is confined and is sad due to human beings who want to enjoy simply watching a tiger in a zoo cage. Alright, so that brings us to the end of the analysis of the poem. Hope that cleared things out for you. Today we are going over the poem How to Tell Wild Animals. So as always, we will first read the poem together and then get to the analysis. If ever you should go by chance to jungles in the east, and if there should to you advance a large and tawny beast, if he roars at you as you dine, you'll know it is the Asian lion. Or if sometime when roaming round, a noble wild beast greets you, with black stripes on a yellow ground, just notice if he eats you. This simple rule may help you learn the Bengal tiger to discern. If strolling forth a beast you view, whose hide with spots is peppered, As soon as he has leapt on you, you'll know it is the leopard. It will do no good to roar with pain. He will only leap and leap again. If when you're walking round your yard, you meet a creature there who hugs you very, very hard, be sure it is a bear. If you have any doubts, I guess he'll give you just one more caress. Though to distinguish beasts of prey, a novice might nonplus, the crocodile you always may tell from the hyena thus. Hyenas come with merry smiles, but if they weep, they're crocodiles. The true chameleon is small, a lizard sort of thing. He hasn't any ears at all, and not a single wing. If there is nothing on the tree, it's the chameleon you see. All right, now let's get to the analysis. How to Tell Wild Animals is a humorous poem written by Carolyn Wells. These animals are very dangerous, and she has introduced them one by one in a very funny way. First of all, she tells us about an Asian lion. She says that if you're visiting the jungles of the East and there you see an animal that has tawny skin and he roars so loudly that you will die out of fear, this means that you have seen an Asian lion. Next in line is the Bengal tiger, that she has explained to be a very royal animal that at once attacks and kills a man. She says by adding humor that if this beautiful black striped animal kills you and eats you, then you have surely met a Bengal tiger. After this, she asks that if a reader met an animal that has black spotted skin and it at once jumps on him, then this means that the reader has met a leopard. Moreover, she says that if one will cry out in pain, it may be of no use as the leopard will not stop attacking him. Then she moves on to the bear that she says will hug very, very tightly. This is the way to recognize a bear, as it kills a person by hugging him very tightly. So she says that the bear will continue to hug us tightly, and that is the only way to recognize him. After this, she asks a question to the readers that do they know how to recognize beasts that hunt their prey? Here she explains about hyenas, which she thinks have smiling faces, and crocodiles that have tears in their eyes. So this can be seen when they are killing their prey. When hyenas kill their prey, they smile. When crocodiles kill their prey, they weep. The last one on the list is the chameleon. She says that it is a lizard, a creature that doesn't have ears or wings, just like a lizard. Only this can help you differentiate between a lizard and a chameleon. She further says that the chameleon has the quality of changing its color according to the color of the surface on which it is sitting. So to explain this, she says that if the reader looks at a tree and can only see the tree and nothing else, this means that there is a chameleon sitting on it, which has already turned its color to brown, just like the trunk or the branch of the tree. That brings us to the end of the analysis. It's simple enough to understand and quite a fun poem to read. Today we'll be going over a poem, which is the ball poem from First Flight. So before we get started with the summary, let's go over the poem together. Let's read it once so we can understand it better. Here we go. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. There it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him. A dime, another ball, is worthless. Now he senses first responsibility in a world of possessions. People will take balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy. And no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning, well behind his desperate eyes, the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days, how to stand up. So, the poem starts with the poet's question, which he asks himself. He talks about a boy who has lost his ball and asks what he will do after losing it. The boy was very happy and cheerful when the ball was with him. The poet further says that the boy must have lost his ball while playing with it by throwing it up and down. At that moment, the ball must have slipped from the boy's hand and into the street. From there, it fell into the nearby river and went into the water. The poet says that there is no use to say that the boy will get another ball. The boy is very sad and is in deep sorrow. He stands in a fixed position, shaking and looking into something continuously. The boy feels that all his young days and childhood memories are gone down in the harbor along with the ball. The boy cannot be told to buy another ball as it would not be worth it. The new ball cannot bring childhood memories and a sense of belonging to the boy. The poet further says that for the first time, the boy has felt a sense of responsibility. He should take care of his things so that they do not get lost in the future. Here, the ball symbolizes the happy moments and innocent days of childhood. The ball's loss is compared with the man's innocent nature. Once we lose our innocence, we can't get it back. Now, the poet also says that the world is full of materialistic things. People will be losing something similar to the ball all the time. They get attached to materialistic things, but these things will not stay forever. The boy has to learn to live without them. The poet further says that no one can buy things back. Money is an external thing. Everything cannot be bought with money. The boy is learning from his experience of losing the ball and trying to get out of that sorrow. He's trying to understand the real truth of life by accepting the miseries or the losses that you have to face in life and standing up again. Early or later, everyone learns the harsh truth that suffering is an inevitable part of life and that we need to forget the pain and move ahead. Therefore, we should learn to accept what happens and learn to let it go. That brings us to the end of the summary and analysis of this poem that we just went through. Hope you understood it. Leave any doubts you have in the comments below. Now today we'll be going over a poem which is Amanda from First Flight, and since this poem has a lot of literary devices and a lot of things that some of you do struggle with, we will go ahead and read the poem first so we're all on the same page and then try and understand it better. So here we go. Don't bite your nails, Amanda. Don't hunch your shoulders, Amanda. Stop that slouching and sit up straight, Amanda. There's a languid emerald sea where the sole inhabitant is me, a mermaid drifting blissfully. Did you finish your homework, Amanda? Did you tidy your room, Amanda? I thought I told you to clean your shoes, Amanda. I am an orphan roaming the street. I pattern soft dust with my hushed bare feet. The silence is golden, the freedom is sweet. Don't eat that chocolate, Amanda. Remember your acne, Amanda. Will you please look at me when I'm speaking to you, Amanda? I am Rapunzel. I have not a care. Life in a tower is tranquil and rare. I'll certainly never let down my bright hair. Stop that sulking at once, Amanda. You're always so moody, Amanda. Anyone would think that I nagged at you, Amanda. Now that's the poem. Let's try and understand it better. So now the poet describes Amanda, who is continuously instructed. It hasn't been specified who, but perhaps a parent figure, maybe a mother or a father, about what to do and what not to do. So in the first stanza, the poet says Amanda's, let's just go with mother for the sake of this explanation. So the poet says that Amanda's mother is pointing out her mistakes and asking her not to bite her nails. She tells her not to bend her back and shoulders. She scolds her for walking in a lazy way with her head and shoulders hanging down, and she directs her to sit straight. After listening to all of this, Amanda starts getting frustrated and starts imagining herself to be in a deep green sea. She imagines how blissful her life would be if she would be a mermaid and have a fish tail instead of legs. Then she would have enjoyed the sea waves and moved along with the waves up and down in the water. Now, in the second stanza, Amanda's mother is inquiring whether she has completed her homework or not. She asks her if she has cleaned her room and reminds her to clean her shoes and all of that. After all this happens, again, just like the first stanza, Amanda imagines her life as something else. In this case, an orphan. She thinks that being an orphan, she can freely roam in the street. She has the freedom to peacefully draw designs on the soft dust with her uncovered feet. She thinks that as an orphan, she can have a silent and peaceful life full of freedom, so that she's not nagged at constantly. Now, here the poet says that she gets so irritated with her mother that she thinks the opposite of what her mother asks her to do. Her mother has advised her to clean her shoes so that she lives a hygienic and healthy life. But Amanda thinks that her mother is snatching away her freedom. That's why she starts imagining that the life of an orphan who has no parents is better than hers. Now, in the third stanza, Amanda's mother is not allowing her to eat chocolates. Whenever she eats chocolates, she gets pimples or acne on her face. So her mother keeps reminding her of that and tells her to listen to her when she is speaking. She wants Amanda to pay attention to her words and follow them. Now, after listening to her mother's words, Amanda again imagines herself to be Rapunzel, a character in a fairy tale. Now, Rapunzel was captured and kept in a tower by a witch. And the witch used to climb the tower with the help of Rapunzel's long hair. So, Amanda wants to live Rapunzel's life as she feels that she can live a calm and quiet life in the tower and that she will never let her hair down so that no one can climb up through her hair and enter the tower. Now, in the last stanza, Amanda's mother warns her to stop sulking. She says that she has become moody and is always in a bad mood. The poem ends with Amanda's mother scolding Amanda to behave properly, as she thinks that if anyone notices Amanda's bad temper, they will judge her as a parent and think that she nagged Amanda. That is the end of the poem. So I hope that gave you a better understanding of Amanda. Today we'll be going over the poem, The Trees. And so as always, we will first read the poem and then get into the explanation. The trees inside are moving out into the forest that was empty all these days, when no bird could sit, no insect hide, no sun bury its feet in shadow. The forest that was empty all these nights will be full of trees by morning. All night the roots work to disengage themselves from the cracks in the veranda floor. The leaves strain towards the glass, small twigs stiff with exertion, long cramped boughs shuffling under the roof like newly discharged patients, half dazed, moving to the clinic doors. I sit inside, doors open to the veranda, writing long letters, in which I scarcely mention the departure of the forest from the house. The night is fresh, the whole moon shines, in a sky still open. The smell of leaves and lichen still reaches like a voice into the rooms. My head is full of whispers, which tomorrow will be silent. Listen, the glass is breaking. The trees are stumbling forward into the night. Winds rush to meet them. The moon is broken like a mirror. Its pieces flash now in the crown of the tallest oak. So The Trees is a poem written by Adrian Rich. So let's get to know a little bit about the poet to understand the poem a little better. Adrian Rich was an American poet, essayist, and feminist writer. If we give the poem just one reading, it will seem like the poet is talking about trees, the environment, how there are not enough trees in the forest, so that could be about deforestation, afforestation, etc. However, because we know that Adrian Rich was a feminist writer, Rich was concerned about the lives of women and their empowerment. And hence the poem is an extended metaphor. The trees are indeed people, specifically women, who are now coming together to uplift themselves. So, according to the poet, the trees inside are moving out into the forest, which was empty for a long, long time. Neither a bird could sit, nor an insect could hide itself. Moreover, the sun also could not cool itself in the shadow, as there are no trees. The first line gives a glimpse of what the poet will discuss in the poem. The trees here are women. The reason the poet calls women as trees is that women have been confined in their homes. So just like a tree cannot roam around, women are not allowed to roam around. They're not allowed to be free. They seem to be like trees at one position, right? So forest here symbolizes the outside world. The poet is of the view that the outside world is not only for men but should also be for women. In this stanza, the poet describes the long and continuous struggle of the women for liberation or freedom. According to her, all the night the roots kept working to disengage themselves from the cracks in the veranda floor. Roots constitute the base of trees. Here they probably symbolize the voice of women. So the women are struggling to free themselves from cracks of the veranda floor, which is confinement in real life. Next, the poet throws more light on the movement. According to her, leaves are pushing the glass and small twigs have hardened with continuous exertion. The glass is also a symbol. It represents the patriarchy, which is not visible, yet it's enough to confine women, and it's really hard to break past it. In this stanza, the poet brings in herself for the first time. According to her, she is also sitting inside, which also could mean that she is confined, and the door of a room opens to the veranda, where the women are confined. It is night time, the sky is clear, and a bright moon is visible. She can smell the leaves and lichen which seem to be calling out. The poet calls these women coming together as a forest and not trees because they are not individuals, but they all come together and they're a very large movement. The poet says that her head is full of whispers, which she believes would be silent by the next morning. Whispers here symbolize the negative forces which always confine the women and snatched away their rights and freedom. But now that the movement is going to be successful, these whispers will also go away. Suddenly, the glass, the imaginary boundaries start breaking with the movement, and the poet asks the audience and readers to listen to this breaking. The trees, women, are now stumbling, which is moving with struggle, forward into the night. After the night, it is a new morning, which could be a new world formed by the freedom of women. There will be new rules and the old ones are going to be obsolete or out of date. The last lines of the poem compare the existence of women with the existence of trees in nature. Alright, so that is the interpretation of the poem if you look at it from the perspective of the poet herself. Obviously, there can be many more interpretations. You could have had your own. If you had any interesting interpretations, do leave them in the comments. But because we understand the background of the poet, we can sort of analyze the poem in that light. That brings us to the end of the explanation. Hope that cleared things out for you. This is going to be very, very short because we're going over this short and sweet poem, Fog. So before we get into the explanation, let's read the poem together. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. So Fog is a very small poem written by Carl Sandburg. He has described the process of the arrival of the fog into a city and the harbor. So he has very beautifully compared it to a cat. The poem reflects Carl Sandburg's interest in nature. It captures the moment when the fog comes and moves. The poet says that the fog, which is generally seen during the winter season, is coming towards the city and the harbor just like a cat. Winter and fog is approaching the city in a silent manner so that no one really notices its arrival, just like a cat. So the fog has covered the whole of the city and the harbor, and it appears as if it is sitting by folding its legs and looking around, just like a cat does when it sits on its haunches and looks around. In the end, he describes the departure of the fog. The fog vanishes silently and unpredictably, again similar to the departure of the cat. So that's it for the explanation of this poem. Very short and sweet. Hope that clears things out for you. Today we are going over the well-loved poem, The Tale of Custer the Dragon. So let's do a quick reading of the poem together before we get into the explanation. Belinda lived in a little white house with a little black kitten and a little grey mouse, and a little yellow dog and a little red wagon and a realio trulio little pet dragon. Now the name of the little black kitten was Ink, and the little grey mouse she called him Blink, and the little yellow dog was sharp as mustard, but the dragon was a coward and she called him Custard. Custer the Dragon had big sharp teeth and spikes on top of him and scales underneath, mouth like a fireplace, chimney for a nose, and realio trulio daggers on his toes. Belinda was as brave as a barrel full of bears, and Ink and Blink chased Lion down the stairs. Mustard was as brave as a tiger in a rage, but Custard cried for a nice safe cage. Belinda tickled him, she tickled him unmerciful. Ink, Blink and Mustard, they rudely called him Percival. They sat laughing in the little red wagon at the realio trulio cowardly dragon. Belinda giggled till she shook the house, and Blink said "Week," which is a giggling for a mouse. Ink and Mustard rudely asked his age, when Custard cried for a nice safe cage. Suddenly they heard a nasty sound, and Mustard growled, and they all looked around. "Meouch!" cried Ink, and "Ooh!" cried Belinda, for there was a pirate climbing in the window. Pistol in his left hand, pistol in his right, and he held in his teeth a cutlass bright. His beard was black, one leg was wood. It was clear that the pirate meant no good. Belinda paled and she cried, "Help, help!" But Mustard fled with a terrified yelp. Ink trickled down to the bottom of the household, and little Mouse Blink strategically mouseholed. But up jumped Custard, snorting like an engine, clashed his tail like irons in a dungeon. With a clatter and a clank and a jangling squirm, he went at the pirate like a robin at a worm. The pirate gaped at Belinda's dragon and gulped some grog from his pocket flagon. He fired 2 bullets, but they didn't hit, and Custard gobbled him every bit. Belinda embraced him, Mustard licked him, no one mourned for his pirate victim. Ink and Blink in glee did gyrate around the dragon that ate the pirate. But presently up spoke little dog Mustard. "I'd have been twice as brave if I'd been flustered." And up spoke Ink, and up spoke Blink. "We'd have been 3 times as brave, we think." And Custard said, "I quite agree that everybody is braver than me." Belinda still lives in a little white house with a little black kitten and a little grey mouse and her little yellow dog and a little red wagon and a realio trulio little pet dragon. Belinda is as brave as a barrel full of bears, and Ink and Blink chase lions down the stairs. Mustard is as brave as a tiger in a rage, but Custard keeps crying for a nice, safe cage. Alright, that's the poem by Ogden Nash. Quite a mouthful, but I tried to do it as nicely as I could for you. Let's get into the analysis now. Go back to the beginning. Alright, so the poem The Tale of Custer the Dragon is written by Ogden Nash. It is written in the style of a ballad. A ballad is a song or a poem that tells a story, and you could hear in the poem itself how it had a rhythm and a beat to it. Now, this poem is a humorous ballad which resembles a parody, which is an imitation of the style of a particular writer, artist, or genre with a deliberate exaggeration for comic effect. It is a humorous poem about a cowardly dragon named Custard. Custard is a pet of Belinda, who is described as a brave little girl who lives in a little white house with her pets. She has a black kitten named Ink, a grey mouse named Blink, a yellow dog named Mustard, and a cowardly dragon named Custard. So the poet says that all of them are very brave except the dragon. And now just a reminder here, obviously you know that dragons are mythical animals, they don't really exist. And in all the stories that you read about dragons, they are supposed to be extremely brave. So the fact that Custard is not brave is very unlikely for a dragon. The other pets are described as brave and are compared to animals like bears, tigers, or lions, but the dragon is very timid. He always demands a nice, safe cage for himself. Everyone makes fun of him, but one night they are surprised by the entry of a pirate, which happens somewhere around here. There we go. Right? So there's a pirate in the house. All of them get frightened and start hiding here and there. But to everyone's surprise, the dragon not only fights the pirate, but also eats him up. Everyone is saved by Custard. And they do thank him. But in the end, they suddenly start saying that, hey, they are braver and could have handled the situation in a much better way. And Custard just agrees with it. He goes along with it. The poem shows that sometimes the people whom we consider as timid can be the real heroes and save the day, even if they do not get the due credit for it. So, never underestimate anybody. That brings us to the end of the poem. Hope that made things a little simpler for you. Today we'll be going over the poem for Anne Gregory. So, before we go into the explanation, let's read the poem together. Never shall a young man, thrown into despair by those great honey-coloured ramparts at your ear, love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. But I can get a hair dye and set such colour there, brown or black or carrot, that young men in despair may love me for myself alone and not my yellow hair. I heard an old religious man but yesternight declare that he had found a text to prove that only God, my dear, could love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. By William Butler Yeats. So, this poem for Anne Gregory, written by W.B. Yeats, a famous Irish poet, is an 18-line poem, and the poet, William Butler Yeats, was an Irish nationalist who had won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. This poem is a conversation between a young man and a young woman. So the young man addresses Anne Gregory and they discuss what makes a person fall in love. So in the first stanza, the young man describes Anne's beauty and says that her beautiful golden hair is what makes people fall in love with her. Her beautiful hair falls on her ears and protects them like a boundary wall protects the fort. Her hair symbolizes the outer beauty that prevents anyone from looking inside her soul. People get very easily attracted to her looks and do not notice Anne's character and her real nature. The young man feels that people will love Anne for her golden hair and physical beauty and not for who she really is, her true nature. In the second stanza, Anne tells the young man that she can always change the color of her hair. She can get a hair dye and color her hair any color she wants, like brown, black, or orange. She tells him that outer beauty is temporary. It can change at any time, and it does change throughout your life. People who love her will see her actual nature. She hopes that the person who falls in love with her will love her for what she is and not just for, her golden hair and external beauty. In the last stanza, the young man replies to Anne and says that he had heard an old religious man saying that only God can love us for what we really are. Humans always look for outer beauty and superficial things and are carried away by glamour and appeal. The young man feels that humans do not have a deep understanding and are unable to look into the soul of a person. Only God can do so and love us for our inner qualities. That brings us to the end of the explanation. Now, obviously, you are free to form your own opinion. This is just one perspective given by the poet.